Tonight, reduced to rubble, a gas line explosion flattens a housing complex in Regina. And a family is still displaced as they continue to grieve loved ones killed and injured in the mass stabbing at James Smith Cree Nation.
I thought we'd be at home by now with our mom.
Plus, it's starting. The Grey Cup arrives on Saskatchewan soil as Regina preps for the big festivities.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It's Monday, November 14th. CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. We're learning more about a low-income housing unit in Regina that was blown apart yesterday due to a gas leak. The explosion happened in the north central neighborhood but rocked much of the city Sunday morning. Jesse Anton has more.
This fourplex now flipped on its side, the rest reduced to rubble. That's the scene here on 6th Avenue and Retallick Street after an explosion over the weekend. Firefighters got the call just before 11 o'clock Sunday morning. When they arrived, they found a collapsed unit with debris all over the streets. Lillian Cusance, who lives just a few doors down, says it was like a scene out of a movie.
All of a sudden, kaboom, and everything started crashing to the floor in my living room, and then I kind of got taken off my feet a little bit by the bang. So it was pretty crazy. It was pretty freaky.
Even Gord Hewitt, Regina's deputy fire chief, says he was taken aback. He says explosions like this aren't something you see every day.
They're not that common, especially to this magnitude. I've been in the fire service for 24 years, and I haven't seen anything like this yet.
Hewitt says one person nearby reported minor injuries from the blast, and several other people had to evacuate their homes for a few hours as crews checked the scene for any safety issues. A city bus was brought in to help keep them warm, and 2 people from a neighboring apartment building are still displaced due to the damage. The fourplex was owned by the Saskatchewan Housing Corporation and run by the Regina Housing Authority. The Housing Corporation tells CBC News no one had been living there since April of last year, so it was boarded up to prevent any break-ins. In a statement, the Housing Corporation says it takes tenant and public safety very seriously and that no concerns were reported about this building in recent exterior inspections. The statement goes on to say the Regina Housing Authority is currently inspecting any other properties in the area to ensure their safety. The fire department says the explosion was caused by a compromised natural gas line. But due to the extent of the damage, investigators weren't able to say what exactly sparked the blast. The investigation is now in the hands of Regina Police. Jesse Anton, CBC News, Regina.
2 Indigenous sisters who have been behind bars for nearly 30 years for a murder of a Saskatchewan farmer could soon be released. But justice advocates say the court process is shrouded in secrecy. Odelia Cusance and her sister Nerissa Cusance have maintained their innocence since 1993. They're applying for release while the Federal Justice Department reviews their convictions. The bail hearing is next week in Yorkton. But justice advocates are upset about a proposed publication ban on all of the evidence and a bid to seal court records. They say it's an attempt to conceal the justice system's mishandling of the sisters' cases.
Are calling on the Saskatchewan Minister of Justice to support Odelia and Nerissa in their application to the federal government to squash their convictions, to agree to their release on bail pending the decision, and to immediately stop this absurd attempt to muzzle the press.
A nonprofit organization called Innocence Canada is representing the sisters in their case. The parents of Megan Gallagher say the past few days have been the most difficult since their daughter disappeared more than 2 years ago. The Gallaghers spoke publicly today for the first time since Megan's remains were identified. Yasmin Khanea has more.
Megan Gallagher's family and loved ones consoled each other at provincial court Monday, here for the court appearance of 2 more people accused in their daughter's death.
The challenge that we've had are just on a different level, and today is about Megan.
30-year-old Gallagher went missing more than 2 years ago. This September, Saskatoon police searched along the South Saskatchewan River near St. Louis and found human remains. Last week, police said DNA testing confirmed the remains belonged to Gallagher and that her death was a homicide. This is the family's first time speaking publicly since that news.
These last few days, since the DNA results have come in, have been among the most challenging in this whole ordeal for us.
9 people have been charged in connection with Gallagher's death, including 4 for first-degree murder. Others face charges for aggravated assault, unlawful confinement, and offering an indignity to human remains. Police are still trying to find and arrest 24-year-old Summer Sky Henry, who is wanted for the first-degree murder of Gallagher. Gallagher, who is a Métis woman, is described as a loving mother, daughter, and sister.
She was an incredible sister. She was an incredible niece. She was an incredible auntie.
Since Gallagher disappeared, her family has constantly searched for answers. They asked anyone with information to speak up, attended more than 30 court appearances, and hosted walks to raise awareness for Megan and all missing and murdered Indigenous women. Gallagher's family hopes justice is served through the courts to bring them a bit closer to healing from her disappearance and death. Yasmin Ranea, CBC News, Saskatoon.
And in another part of Saskatchewan, another family is speaking out about a tragedy they've endured. Deborah Burns' father was killed and her mother was seriously injured in the mass stabbing at James Smith Cree Nation. Deborah sat down with the CBC's Kendall Latimer to share more about her family's struggle more than 2 months after the attacks.
Deborah Burns and her family are still living in hotels more than 2 months since the mass stabbing at James Smith Cree Nation. Renovations to their family home, meant to remove all traces of the bloody attack, still aren't done. Her mother, Joyce, who was stabbed multiple times, is still in and out of the hospital. She's been trying her hardest to be really strong for all of us, right? Herself included. I can see it in her eyes, and I can see it in her body, that this had taken a lot out of her.
In the early hours of September 4th, Deborah's brother-in-law, Miles Sanderson, broke into her parents' home at James Smith Cree Nation. He attacked her mom, then chased after her father, Earl, killing him. Miles Sanderson had tried to kill Earl before. He had been in a long-term relationship with Deborah's younger sister. Court records show he assaulted and threatened his partner multiple times, and several years ago stabbed Earl repeatedly. Deborah says despite this violence, it seemed impossible for her sister to leave.
Vanessa had tried, but she knew she would be putting us in danger. She always knew that. And sure enough, the worst happened.
Deborah's mom, Joyce, spent days on life support in the hospital. She's still struggling with health complications, trauma, and grief from losing her husband of 4 decades. The family is also struggling financially.
I thought we'd be at home by now with our mom, helping her heal. I thought maybe, everything could get back to normal for us right away, and I didn't know we'd be that family that's last.
Deborah wonders why they haven't received more help from the James Smith leadership, especially when so many donations were sent to the community.
It's maddening. There's absolutely zero transparency, no communication, zero communication with Chief and Council.
Mm-hmm. James Smith Chief Wally Burns spoke briefly with CBC. He says the band is still sorting out finances with the government and has not accessed the donations from a crowdfunding campaign.
I don't even know if I got to grieve yet my father, because I'm just... This is all just so unbelievable and so hard. It comes in waves for sure. One day I can be okay, the next... It's unbelievable.
Deborah says her family can't wait anymore.
So she started her own online fundraiser for the family. She says it's impossible to heal while struggling to make ends meet. Kendall Latimer, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Today, the Government of Saskatchewan introduced some amendments to child welfare legislation. The Ministry of Social Services says it consulted with Indigenous communities before drafting the bill. But the official opposition says it's disappointed it wasn't brought into the process.
I requested an opportunity to sit with the folks that would be working on the bill to bring to their attention the many ways in which people in the community were sharing with me that the act was insufficient, and I wasn't provided that opportunity.
The changes would raise the age of the child from 16 to 18 for protective services. It would also strengthen language in the Welfare Act about family, community, and cultural connections for those in care. That includes requiring that a child's Indigenous identity be considered in case planning. It was a delivery that matched the pageantry surrounding the event. The Grey Cup arrived at 15 Wing Moose Jaw today on a Snowbirds aircraft. CFL Commissioner Randy Ambrogi was there to greet the trophy. It will now go to Saskatoon, where this week's Grey Cup Festival will officially begin tomorrow.
You know, seeing the Grey Cup strapped into the seat in the Snowbird is pretty special, and what a great Canadian symbol riding in another great Canadian symbol. So that was amazing. And the hospitality today, Bouchard, Air Wing 15, Moose Jaw, they've rolled out the welcome wagon, made us all feel, like we're at home.
The trophy will make its way to Regina on Wednesday in the Highway 11 Cup Run. That will be carried out by members of the Saskatoon Police, RCMP, Armed Forces, and Indigenous leaders. And of course, we now know the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and Toronto Argonauts will vie for the Cup at Mosaic Stadium on Sunday.
Regina hotels are currently reporting a sellout weekend, which we are really excited about. We will be welcoming thousands and thousands of guests to our city and are super, super excited about that. What are hotels doing to prep? We are staffing up and stocking up on beer.
Preparing for Grey Cup revelers also means making sure they have a safe way to get to and from the festival grounds. Free shuttles will run Thursday to Sunday every half hour from mid-morning until late. Parking at the festival site is on a first-come, first-served basis and costs $10 during the week, $35 on game day. You can find out more information about the shuttles on the Grey Cup Festival app and website.
It's the veteran, the Canada West most outstanding player with a football in his hand, and kneel it out.
The University of Saskatchewan Huskies hoisted their second straight Hardy Cup on Saturday. They defeated the UBC Thunderbirds 23-8 on the frozen Griffiths Stadium turf. In total, the Huskies have won the Canada West Football Championships 21 times. Next up, they play in the UTEC Bowl in Nova Scotia on Saturday. And if they win there, they will play in the Vanier Cup on November 26th.
Shuchuk in shotgun formation.
The Regina Thunder were not as lucky in their gridiron battle at the Canadian Bowl on Saturday. The Thunder lost the Canadian Junior Football League Championship to the Okanagan Sun with a final score of 21-19. It's the first time in 22 years the Sun have won the championship. The Thunder last won the Cup in 2013. We'll be back with more after the break. Welcome back. People gathered yesterday to honor a man found dead, frozen outside in Saskatoon last week. Kevin James Sutherland's sister and mother attended the vigil. Irene Sutherland said her son was homeless for about 5 years. He died outside of the city centre church. The coroner's office has not confirmed his cause of death, but his family believes he died of exposure to the cold. Local residents say that's unacceptable.
It's unfathomable to me for someone to be out, and not only that aspect of like the physical cold, but like the hurt of just not feeling cared for by fellow humans.
Police do not consider Sutherland's death suspicious. More than 80 people die from exposure to the cold in Canada every year.
This weather update is brought to you by Capital Ford Lincoln. 22 model clear out is on now.
Weather specialist Ethan Williams joins us now with a look at the forecast. And the cold is still hanging around this week, right, Ethan?
Yeah, that's right, Natasha. And it's been hanging around this week. It hung around over the weekend. Very, very cold last week. In fact, some pretty interesting stats going into those first 10 days of November this year, the first third of the month. In fact, many locations, 15 to 20 degrees below normal for the time of year last week. Exceptionally cold conditions. Saskatoon, you actually had your third coldest overnight low in the first third of November. On record, you hit minus 29.1 overnight into Thursday morning on the 10th last week. And Regina, our average daytime high for these first 10 days of November this year was around -1. Compare that to November of 2016. It was very warm. Our average high for the first 10 days that year, 16 degrees above zero. So we are very, very cold right now. And that continues through our current temperatures, especially on the eastern side of the province, east central, southeastern Saskatchewan, still about 10 degrees cooler than it is on the western side of the province, and almost 20 degrees cooler between Wynyard and Maple Creek. We do have a warm front that's moving through, so it's warming up on that side of the province, but high pressure really reinforcing those cold temperatures, and our jet stream at the upper atmosphere also reinforcing those cold temperatures. You can see this trough diving down here, east central and southeastern Saskatchewan, really caught in that. We do have this ridge building off to our west, but as we put this in motion, it really doesn't go anywhere over these next few days. And we're left between this ridge and this trough of some very cold air, and that means our temperatures really not going to move that much over these next few days. We are watching some snow moving between Regina and Swift Current along the number 1 highway, and that snow and even possibly some freezing rain is possible in southwestern and south central Saskatchewan tonight. This high pressure remains in place over east central Saskatchewan for the next couple of days. We are going to see some snow move through the north of the province tomorrow. Very minimal accumulations from that. And then as this high pressure moves out, we're watching low pressure move through Manitoba, and that's going to be bringing some snowfall to much of the province and some pretty gusty winds as we head through the day on Wednesday. Winds tomorrow not actually going to be too bad through the province, but again on Wednesdays that system moves through, gusts generally between 50 and 60 kilometers an hour most likely. We are watching for some fog in southwestern and west central regions tonight, and that means visibility could drop close to zero at some points going through the overnight tonight. So keep in mind if you're heading out on the highways tonight or early tomorrow morning. Let's take a look at our extended forecast in Regina. We're looking at a high of -10 tomorrow, and then snow moves in with that system on Wednesday. Again, 1 to 3 centimeters, not much accumulation from that. Temperature's going to drop heading into the weekend. The Grey Cup game on Sunday looking not terrible at this point. We'll get some sunshine. Saskatoon, you're going to be a little bit warmer as we've seen over these past couple of days. Temperatures, though, going to drop, and it looks like double-digit minus temperatures still going to be sticking around, Natasha.
Thanks for that, Ethan.
You're welcome.
We'll have more news after the break. Food bank usage has risen sharply in this province, up 37% from March 2021 to that month this year. David Froh with the Regina Food Bank says it's time we have some tough conversations about why food insecurity is getting worse in Saskatchewan. I met up with him at the food bank to learn more. So at this point, how many people are using the Regina Food Bank every month?
We're feeding over 12,000 people every single month, but 30% is the big number because that's the amount of people we believe we're actually feeding, meaning there's many more thousands of children and families that are going unsupported in our community.
Can you give me a bit more of a sense of the breakdown of who's using the food bank? Any sort of standout numbers for you?
Yeah, well, the big one is 41% of our clients are kids, right? And kids would typically make about 20% of the population of our community. 11% are senior citizens. These grandparents worked their whole lives, paid taxes, volunteered, coached, and they're coming to us for support because they can't make ends meet. And about 1,200 new Canadians, double the amount that we did last year. So we feed people in every corner of this city, every community. Within a couple of blocks of where your viewers are watching, I guarantee someone is using the food bank today.
Now, over here we have one of the food hampers that you give out to your clients. When you look at this box and when you look at the folks who come in here on a daily basis, who access your services, what do you want people at home to know about who's benefiting from this food, who really needs this food?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that. We call ourselves neighbors feeding neighbors because that's what we are in proud Prairie tradition. Behind this box, right, behind this pork and these bagels and these lentils is a family, and the food matters. It's critically important, but so is the dignity of knowing that we care for each other. Now listen, the issues that caused food insecurity were here before the pandemic, and they'll be here after the pandemic. We have a minimum wage that is not a living wage. The majority of our users are renters, and when you're spending 30 to 40% of your income on rent or more, you cannot afford food. We have a lack of grocery stores in big parts of our town, and we have, frankly, supports for people on disability and elderly people that don't align with what things cost today. So we know that there's serious health, economic, and educational implications when you're not food insecure, and we know we're not actually dealing with the problem today.
The Regina Food Bank turns 40 years this year, is that right?
That's right.
You had mentioned to me previously that it was meant to be a temporary organization, if you will, that it was never meant to have to last this long. How does that make you feel to see that 40-year number?
It's a birthday we didn't want to celebrate. And we used to say we're going to work ourselves out of business. But when your demand increases every single year, you can't say that anymore. We have a crisis. This is a food bank that is not funded by government, but that we deal with the impacts of how we decide to treat each other as a society. We have to have really hard conversations about why, after 40 years, when a food bank was intended to be temporary, need is at a record high. And I say record on purpose. It truly is a record high. So it's the birthday we didn't want to celebrate. We're very grateful to community that they help us feed our neighbors. But what we really want as a birthday present is for us to start having conversations on how we bring those numbers down. We cannot keep on coming back and speaking about this crisis situation.
You've mentioned a lot about help from on high, from higher levels of government. Looking at this hamper, I think of what I try to collect every year, what grocery stores try to collect, fundraising campaigns. What can I do as an individual? What will help the food bank the most?
Yeah, we used to have food drives. We call them, unfortunately, fund drives now. When you donate to a food bank, every dollar that's donated results in 3 meals. We do that because we can buy food cheaper and at scale. We get lots of food from our grocery store partners, but to move 4.7 million pounds of food a year, we have to buy a lot of food. So a donation always helps, but what we really want, what your food bank really wants, is for you to have a conversation with your family, your neighbors, your elected officials on ways to solve food insecurity. We have all the means at our disposal. All it takes is some creativity and the will.
And Ethan is back with one last look at our forecast.
And it will be a chilly but clear night in Regina, Natasha. We're looking at -14 at midnight. Wind's going to be fairly light. They'll pick up a little bit as we get into the morning. We're looking at a wind chill of -22. But again, mainly sunny conditions, especially as we head to the noon hour, heading to around -11 with a wind chill around -18. Cloudier in Saskatoon. We're looking for a midnight temperature around -12. Getting tomorrow morning, clouds still sticking around, feeling like -17. And as we head to the noon hour, getting close to -8. It will be above the -10 mark, Natasha, but still pretty cloudy.
Thanks, Ethan.
You're welcome.
That's it for us tonight. Glenn Reed will be back this evening with more local news at 11. Thanks for watching.